Everybody watching this video is making one of two mistakes with 0.21 Bitcoin. The first group thinks 0.21 Bitcoin is going to make them rich overnight. The second group thinks Bitcoin already got too big to matter anymore. And weirdly enough, both groups completely misunderstand what's actually happening. If neither can grasp what is truly going on, their chances at reaching true wealth are nearing closer to zero each and every single day. Because the real Bitcoin story in 2026 is no longer about getting rich quick. It's about ownership, influence, and access. This is about whether or not ordinary people can still secure a meaningful piece of the monetary network that may end up underneath the entire global financial system. Today, I'm going to be clearing up the single biggest misunderstanding in this entire space in the simplest way possible, because this is the reason both broke people and wealthy people are getting Bitcoin wrong in completely different ways. Broke people massively overestimate how fast Bitcoin can change their lives, and the wealthy massively underestimate how big Bitcoin can become long term. And right in the middle of those two mistakes sits one very important number. So here's how a seemingly random number can become your ticket to financial freedom. There will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin. Now divide those coins into chunks of 0.21 Bitcoin. You get 100 million possible positions. That means owning 0.21 Bitcoin theoretically puts you inside the top 1% of possible Bitcoin holders on Earth. And when most people first hear that, they react in one of two ways. The broke mindset hears that and thinks, getting 0.21 Bitcoin will get me rich next month. The wealthy people hear that and think, interesting, but probably not life-changing. And honestly, both reactions miss the point completely, because the real significance of Bitcoin is not today's dollar value. It's what ownership represents once Bitcoin matures into a global monetary asset. Because once you understand this concept, you stop looking at Bitcoin like a trade and you start looking at it like a land to be claimed. That's the mental shift that changes everything. Most people think Bitcoin is competing with stocks or gold, but Bitcoin is not trying to become the next Apple. Bitcoin is trying to become the monetary layer underneath the global economy itself. And if that sounds dramatic, look at what's already happening. The biggest financial institutions on earth are no longer asking whether Bitcoin matters. That debate is long over. BlackRock is in, Fidelity is in, governments are studying it, public companies are adding it to balance sheets, pension funds are slowly entering through ETFs. The same people who laughed at Bitcoin 5 years ago are now trying to secure exposure before everyone else realizes what's happening. And that changes the game completely. Because the moment Bitcoin stopped being a niche internet asset, the supply became a real problem. Most people still hear 21 million Bitcoin and think that sounds like a lot, but it's not. Especially when you understand how much money actually exists in this world. There are over 58 million millionaires, over 3,000 billionaires. And all of that capital is competing for exposure to an asset with a fixed supply. And that's why the average person keeps misunderstanding Bitcoin. They're still viewing it through the lens of price, instead of through the lens of territory to be claimed. And this is where most people make the first major mistake. They massively overestimate how fast Bitcoin can rise from here. Not because Bitcoin is weak, but because Bitcoin is no longer a tiny underground asset moving in isolation. This is now a global macro asset. That means Bitcoin moves through cycles. Liquidity cycles, political cycles, interest rate cycles, institutional accumulation cycles, and during those periods, people get impatient. They buy Bitcoin, expecting life-changing wealth in 6 months, then the market goes sideways for a year. And then they quit right before the expansion phase begins. That's why most people never build real meaningful positions in this market. And your time to build that position is shrinking every single day. That is exactly why the Bitcoin bear market creates the biggest opportunities, because bear markets expose who actually understands scarcity. Everybody loves Bitcoin when the price is exploding. That part is easy. The hard part is buying when nobody cares. When headlines say Bitcoin is dead, when prices collapse, when engagement disappears, when your friends stop talking about it completely. That's when real positions get built, because the people who became wealthy from Bitcoin are usually not the people who bought during the top of the hype cycles. They're the people who accumulated aggressively during periods of fear and boredom, which is what we are entering right now this summer. That's the part social media never shows you. Nobody posts screenshots during the most painful accumulation years, but those years are where almost all meaningful wealth creation actually happens. And while broke people overestimate how fast Bitcoin can rise, wealthy people almost do the exact opposite. Most of them don't hate Bitcoin anymore, but they still mentally place it in the same category as overhyped tech. And that misunderstanding may become one of the most expensive financial mistakes of this decade, because Bitcoin is not trying to replace random tech companies. It's competing with the global storage of value itself. Savings, bonds, real estate, gold, treasuries, collateral markets. that's the real battlefield. And if Bitcoin captures even a small percentage of those markets, the repricing becomes enormous. Here's where this gets even more important. Most wealthy people already understand the importance of ownership. That's how they became wealthy in the first place. They own businesses, stocks, real estate. You can build more houses, you can create more stocks. Governments can print more money, but Bitcoin's supply will never go up. And over time, the strong hands remove Bitcoin from those people permanently. Some coins are lost forever, some got locked away for decades, and some got absorbed by institutions that never intend to sell, which means the available supply becomes smaller and smaller every cycle. Meanwhile, demand keeps expanding globally.
I encourage people to buy and hold. I encourage them to save Bitcoin for their retirement, for their future.
That imbalance is the entire story, and most people still do not understand how early we actually are in that process, especially when you zoom out globally. Most humans still do not own Bitcoin, most financial advisors still do not recommend Bitcoin, and most governments still barely understand Bitcoin. That is still early. Not early in the sense that Bitcoin is unknown, that phase is long done, but early in the terms of global monetary adoption. The internet was already famous in the late 90s, but it still changed the world over the next 20 years. Bitcoin is entering that exact phase right now. And if that's true, then the real risk is not volatility. It's hesitation, because volatility is temporary, but being permanently underexposed to a scarce monetary asset during global adoption is the biggest wealth mistake possible. And one day, people may look back at owning 0.21 Bitcoin the same way previous generations looked at owning beachfront properties in the most beautiful cities in America. Since becoming an online content creator, I called the exact top of the counter trend rally that just happened and telegraphed this information freely to spread the message. Down below is where I offer free market updates to assist you during this uncertain time in the crypto market, as well on this YouTube channel where I offer completely free services to help expand the reach of true market analysis using macro and micro economic principles. If you enjoyed this video, like, subscribe, share to someone who you think would enjoy it. I am your boy, Jack Reynolds, and I'll see you in the next one.